Hey, what's going on everyone? It is TSJ. Welcome back to another discussion video. This is kind of a follow-up to one I made a few months ago about Total War Pharaoh. It was getting a lot of hate at the time. Still kind of pretty much is. Mixed hate. And that video did okay. It seemed like I kind of just defended it and said, kind of wait till it comes out. Make your judgments then. And it seems like people have, and that it is out, and it's kind of what I expected, right? That it would not be well received. And so this video is going to be a defense of Total War Pharaoh. Probably will end up getting a lot of dislikes for a couple of reasons. Most of all, I'll just admit right out the bat, I have not played Total War Pharaoh. So now before you kind of comment like you don't have a say, that is valid. I should play. That said, I've watched a ton of videos on it. I've watched the reviews fully. Andy's Take, The Terminator, IGN. I watched Legend of Total War's kind of response the other day to this, and even Pixelated Apollo's meme video. So, even though I'm really busy, in school and what have you, and YouTube is a hobby, I try to at least stay up to date on the, I'm just going to call it drama with this series of games, because it's one that my channel is based around 95% of the time, and I feel like I feel like I've played enough of Total War now, having cumulatively 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 hours between I'd say about 2,000 hours between all the games, and I've played pretty much all of them except maybe the first Medieval, the first Shogun. And so I feel like, I probably am able to throw my opinion in here, a little bit. So let's just kind of jump into it, because I've written down, having listened to all the videos and read some of the reviews, notes. Now, this isn't necessarily just me playing devil's advocate, and I also do agree with some of the points, but I do feel like a lot of the judgment that Total War Pharaoh is getting, that CA is getting, is largely because it was already preparing for that. The community was already preparing for that before the game came out. I'm gonna probably name drop a few times some other Total War YouTubers, not because I think they're dumb or stupid. I love, I watched all of Terminator's and Legend of Total War's videos mostly, and a lot of Andy's Takes videos. I have they're incredible. Their YouTube channels obviously are much bigger than mine, but I watch their takes because I respect their thoughts and opinions on Total War, and so this is kind of a response to that, and again, just a defense of this game. So to kind of just go in no particular order, Legend of Total War, which is the last one I had watched, he mentioned a lot of the reviews. So the reviews are mixed, right? And he kind of mentioned that how did he know that it was going to be such a cluster, right? I too thought it was kind of knew it was going to be. There was in no world did I think this game would come out and blow everyone's minds away, right? I know everyone said the Terminator, Andy's Take was all we're making these videos, we're gonna withhold judgment, but I'm an admin on the Facebook Total War page, which you should totally join if you're not a member. It's got 30,000 members, and that the hate on there that this game was getting, it was pretty obvious that this game would come out and would probably fail, for whatever reason, which we'll get into, price tag, era, what have you. So it's not a surprise at all that this game, came out to mixed reviews. Now, again, he mentioned, so Legend of Total War went over the reviews and pointed out a lot of the negatives were well written. Okay, so I kind of went on here to look. Now again, his was posted a few days ago, recorded a few days, so maybe it had changed. But as of today, October 14th, the top 4 reviews are negative. 2 of them are pretty detailed. But then if you keep going down, the positive reviews are much more detailed. I mean, much more detailed in general. Okay, obviously, you know, they're getting, you know, every now and then you have just a one-liner. But look at this. Okay, I'd also like to point out that the people who are giving it a positive review have played the game much more than this guy played, you know, 30 minutes, right? 20 minutes. Again, I'm not negating their negative. This is not me trying to sound like there's a right or wrong answer. Okay, first of all, those videos are, you know, this is all subjective, and obviously these people didn't like the game, and they're allowed to not like the game. I'm just saying, if you're looking at merit on who, you know, potentially, like this person has 22 hours and wrote a really lengthy review. So, you know, they, as did, you know, this guy here, it looks like as well. So it's kind of, it is like, as it says, a mixture. It's not like the game is just totally panned by players, okay? Because it's just not. And I suggest, you know, I recommend, if you're curious, you know, to go on here and read the reviews yourself. You know, I just feel like, you know, this person doesn't like the economy, right? It's very similar to Troy, which we'll get to in just a minute, right? The complaint about it being too similar to Troy. You know, it's all obviously subjective. If you didn't like Troy, you're definitely not going to like Total War Pharaoh. But I just wanted to point that out because I went on here to look after Legend of Total War brought that to my attention in his video. And I was kind of like, okay, so it's not really like the reviews are, it's only the negative reviews that are detailed. It's kind of, again, a mixture. It's very mixed. Okay, so that's the reviews, okay? Then it's like the elephant in the room, of course, is that it's like Troy, right? Which I've heard, you know, mentioned a few times. And I mentioned this in the last video, and a few people commented in my last kind of rebuttal in defense of CA, of Pharaoh, and a few people were like, you know, no, you're wrong. The CA should know better. That you know, it's a reskin essentially, right? And again, I'm gonna kind of just say what I had said before, and that is, you know, a lot of the Total War games that we love to play are essentially like Empire Napoleon is effectively a reskin. You know, Rome to Attila is Rome to Attila is effectively a reskin. Okay, now I don't say that as like a one-to-one reskin, right? Like there are different scripts. Obviously, there are different eras, of course. As is this. You know, Troy and Pharaoh are different eras, different geographic locales, right? So it is, you know, something to, you know, I just feel like that complaint of like it's too much like Troy is kind of just a cop-out, and it's like you really just don't like the ancient Egypt era, which is totally fine, because you're not wrong on like it is very similar to Troy. Like everyone who's saying it is not necessarily incorrect, but the games that you do like Napoleon, everyone likes Napoleon, I love Napoleon and Empire, are also very similar. Okay, like they just are, you know. And I know Napoleon's, it's a smaller geographic area, it's more it is more fleshed out than Empire in the sense that it runs better, it's not as buggy, all right? But yeah, I mean, you have guns, you create your army, and you set up your cannons, you march towards each other, and ultimately, you know, you have some cav battles, but you shoot at each other long range. Like that's what that is. You know, an Empire is literally, it's like there's not that many scripts that change up the gameplay style. You know, it's actually one of the most bare bones. Now, I'm not saying the mods aren't, right? The mods like Empire 2, and the Terminator just made a great video on that. But all of this is to say, guys, that like my personal opinion is that the people who are complaining that it's just like Troy and that's, you know, awful, are like the games that you like are also like reskins of each other essentially. Okay, in my view, they just are. They're just very too similar. So you just don't. So people just aren't a fan of which I have seen, right? Like people admit to. Why did they make ancient? I mean, I think someone mentioned that in one of the reviews down here. Someone was like, 1 out of a million asked for this era. Yeah, so that's probably true. I haven't really heard too many, like in my 15 years playing this franchise, I haven't, heard too many people mention ancient Egypt. That said, this is kind of segues into my defense of CA overall, right? Which again, please don't hate me. I'm not defending big corporations or stuff like that because, it's my job, right? I'm a history major, a PhD student, and so I really look at the nuances of things. And to me, it just seems like this is a franchise that will eventually encompass so many different historical eras where there will be something for everyone, which is totally good. We should all want that, right? Because now, if someone is in love with ancient Egyptian history, which for the record it is not my area of interest. First of all, my focus in my program is Cold War foreign policy. So that's not even something total CA is probably ever going to touch anyway. But that's good. Now people who are interested in this era have this, era to play, and then it's great. Just like Three Kingdoms. I remember Pixelated Apollo made a video about Three Kingdoms and how they're appeasing to the Chinese market, which is yeah, definitely. And also they did that with Troy with Epic Games, but it just in general, Three Kingdoms is an incredible game. It is literally an incredible game. I highly recommend, even if you're not into that era, Three Kingdoms, Chinese history. I mean, it's incredible. There are the diplomacy, the politicking, the family dynamics are so great. I just did a few Let's TSJ plays a few months ago for Three Kingdoms, and they were really fun. But all this is to say again, so I think, my understanding is that eventually I am totally on board and believe that we will eventually get Medieval 3 and Empire 2. Probably a Medieval 2 remastered if I was to guess. But this is in my mind another okay, they've checked off this era, and they're probably not going to come back to this anytime soon. If I had to guess, I could be wrong, but again, ancient Egypt is a major part of history. I mean, we all learn about that, probably, I know in the US you do, in grade school. So it's not any small feat necessarily. And then to get to the complaint about the price tag and it being $60, I've seen a lot of people say this should have been a Saga game, and I can kind of essentially get on board with that perhaps, but you have to keep in mind, guys, geographically speaking, if you look at the campaign map, it's essentially, it mirrors that of Japan, okay, Shogun 2 Total War, and that literally just takes place on Japan, right? So should that be a Saga game? I don't, maybe, because I mean, how do the people who are ranking, who are suggesting that this game should be a Saga game, what's the parameters for that? Because if it's just geographic based, then Shogun 2 should be one as well, because it's very I understand the complaints. The map is a little weird, it's very narrow. I totally agree with that. It's not I'm gonna get this game eventually and play it, but I understand that. But it's all the same, it's still should Shogun 2 be a Saga game? Probably, maybe, if you feel map size matters. I don't know. So that's kind of that point there. So I guess that's kind of it. Those are kind of the big criticisms. I don't want to keep rambling. I know someone mentioned that last time, you're rambling too much. And, you guys know I'm so busy that I don't have time to make a script. And so I just kind of go off the cuff. So I apologize if that, bothers you. It's just kind of just the nature of in real life stuff. But I do hope that this video causes some, discussion, because I want that. I want this video to create discussion. Don't hate me, please. I'm not trying to be naive or, like defensive of a major company. I just truly, I've often thought recently maybe I should change my YouTube channel from like TSJ to like the optimistic gamer, because I always try to be an optimist for stuff. And this, CA, I mentioned this in the last video, is not like Bethesda Fallout 76 or CD Projekt Red Cyberpunk 2077, with this game. Like, this Total War Pharaoh is simply not a buggy mess. It's literally, my understanding, to summarize, is that everyone wants a Medieval 3, and assuming most of the people who are not liking this game are not into this era, that's what it comes down to. They're not into ancient Egypt, so why'd you make that? All right, voice crack. Why did they make this game? It's like that's just, I'm not in the mindset, but again, this is a series, a franchise that goes through different eras. Sometimes they make sequels to the same era, Rome 2, Shogun 2, and what have you. And in this case, they tried something new, just as they did with Troy. So I recommend getting it, even though I haven't played it. Well, I guess what I mean is, if you're into a certain era, and you're only into that era, like Empire 2, obviously just stick with that, because you already know. But if you're kind of like me, which I have come across, gamers like this who like to try everything with Total War, with this franchise, then you should get it, right? I just did an Achilles playthrough a month or two ago, and for Troy, and it was really, really fun. Like, I actually sat down and played, a few dozen hours of Troy and had a great time. And now, I'm moving on to, Medieval 2 and Warhammer 3, which, by the way, have not played Warhammer 3 until now. So, like, just give it a try, guys, is what I'd recommend. All right, if you have the extra money and you want to try something new, just give it a go. Buy it on sale, or some other outlet, or from a friend, or what have you, family members. So somehow, if you're that interested, and just judge it then, right? And if you get a good campaign out of it, or a few campaigns out of it, or you try something new, then that's good. The character based. I saw another person complain about the characters and how it's too character based now, and it's like, that's probably CA listening, because they all know that people role play with their games anyway, and so they're like, let's keep it, let's emphasize characters, and it's like, that's neither here nor there to me. I'm totally fine with that. So yeah, I don't know. It just seems like people are nostalgic for the old stuff. It's never going back to like the Medieval 2, the Medieval 2 type, I don't know, just standard, I would say, which is like fine, because Three Kingdoms, which came out however long, a decade and a half after Medieval 2, is an incredible game. Like, it's incredible. So I'm fine with the way that CA is taking things. Please don't lynch me for it. It's not my intention to upset anybody, but I'm just totally happy with that. So I am seriously rambling on now. Last thing I'm going to mention, it just came to me, is that I think it was, who was it? Legend of Total War Pixelated Apollo mentioned something about like the combat. This mentioning Medieval 2, it came to me, ripping on the combat or what have you. And like, again, guys, I don't see how anyone can rip on the combat for these games, for these newer games, and like think the combat in Medieval 2 is good. I mean, I'm gonna be honest. You guys know, like, most of my TSJ plays are Medieval 2 based. I love Medieval 2, but like, have you ever seen a cavalry charge in Medieval 2? It's pathetic. And I'm not saying like that's just the technology limited for the time, but like, compare a cavalry charge then and then a cavalry charge in like Warhammer 3 or Three Kingdoms. There's no comparison. So like, I don't understand. Like, I think the combat now is much more fluid. I'm not talking about pathfinding or AI. That's just a constant with every Total War. But like, the combat in these newer Total Wars is objectively much better than the older than the older ones, in my mind. So, all right, I'll leave it at that, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. Stay super, and I'll see you all next time.